Have your attention, please. The Seoul Design Award Conference will start at 2 p.m. Korea time. Please check your connection status online. Simultaneous interpretation will be provided for the entire event. For those who are participating online, please check the channel for your preferable language, Korean or English, and sound in advance. This event is being conducted in compliance with the COVID-19 quarantine guidelines to ensure safety. Thank you. Hello and welcome to Seoul Design Award Conference, Changing Daily Lives and People Who Make Changes Through Design. My name is Ki Kim and I've been privileged to be an MC for this event. The world is changing so quickly, and I personally was once proud of being an early adapter, but sometimes I find nowadays it's very difficult to follow those changes. And this conference contains the vivid voices of many people who are working to make changes in our lives for better in our rapidly changing daily life. And here, we'd like to discuss what role design can actually play in those changes and what creative solutions the design can offer. This conference takes place on October 24th and 25th, and day one will feature caring design, starting to exert good influence and actionable design changes we make. And also, the day two will feature coexisting design, sustainable world. Finally, there will be an announcement ceremony for the Seoul Design Award 2023 for sustainable daily life, containing those three messages discussed throughout this conference. Now, let us begin the Seoul Design Award Conference for a Sustainable Daily Life. First, there will be an opening address by Kyungdon Lee, the CEO of Seoul Design Foundation.
안녕하십니까? 서울디자인재단
Greetings.
대표이사 이경돈.
I am Lee Kyung-don, CEO of Seoul Design Foundation. I'm very pleased to announce the inauguration of the Seoul Design Award for Sustainable Daily Living. I'd like to express my deepest gratitude to everyone joining us, especially to the award panel advisors and juries who are helping to create a more sustainable world through design, as well as to the UNESCO Creative Cities of Design for a strong show of support from across the globe. Thank you very much. I am pleased to meet you online, the new channel of global communication. Amidst our ever-changing lives, Seoul continues to undertake challenges and spur innovation for the future. At the same time, Seoul continues to ensure, as we make speedy advancements into the future, no one is left behind. We are making sure that everyone is moving forward together. Seoul Design Award is a venue for sharing, as people from around the world advance towards a future together. We have envisioned this event as an opportunity for designers from all over the world who are armed with the future's most important weapon, called creativity, to exert good influence. Human City Design Award, which was given 3 times previously, has been relaunched as the Seoul Design Award. The award selects and shares ideas that create more attractive living spaces that provide happiness to a vast majority of people in this world, even the most underprivileged minorities. Today marks the very beginning of that journey. I would like to ask designers, institutions, and organizations at home and abroad for their interest and participation. Seoul Design Foundation, together with the wider world, is taking the lead in preparing for the future. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to working more closely with you going forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your warm remark, Mr. Lee. And following the opening remark, UNESCO Secretary Denise Bax has sent us a congratulatory message under the theme and meaning of learning and sharing with the world. So please welcome the Secretary.
Dear Creative City of Seoul, dear design professionals, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure for me to take part in this international conference organized in the framework of this year's Human Design Award, which rewards individuals who exert a positive influence through design. I would like to congratulate the Seoul Design Foundation and the Seoul Metropolitan Government for jointly organizing this international event. The theme of the conference, Daily Lives Undergoing Changes, People Who Make Changes Through Design, echoes UNESCO's commitment to promoting the development of sustainable and human-centered contemporary design by nurturing exchange of knowledge, expertise, and good practices with all relevant actors in the field of design. intrinsically creative. Design is a powerful enabler to identify our needs and aspirations, as well as address contemporary challenges and opportunities, such as the COVID-19 pandemic and climate change. It is essential that we join hands toward a global response built on local insights and creativity. Indeed, the sharing of experiences, knowledge, and best practices in the field of culture lies at the heart of the UNESCO's Creative Cities Network and its mission. By connecting creative cities around the world through various initiatives undertaken by member cities, such as Seoul's Human City Design Award, the network advocates for design as a solution-oriented creative field to overcome contemporary challenges and build the sustainable cities of tomorrow. I believe that in this respect, mutual learning and international cooperation constitute our best assets. For this reason, I would like to reiterate my appreciation to the Creative City of Seoul for organizing the conference, which leverages the power of design to build our common sustainable future. I wish you all a successful conference. Thank you.
Thank you for your kind yet meaningful words. Next, the president of World Design Organization, David Kuzma, sent us a message on the power of design to change the world. So please welcome him on the stage.
Hello, dear friends. My name is David Kusuma, President of the World Design Organization, and on behalf of WDO, I want to celebrate with you the opening of the Seoul Design Award Conference for Sustainable Life. I want to first send my regards to Ri Kyun-don, CEO of the Seoul Design Foundation, and I also want to thank the external cooperation team at the Seoul Design Foundation R&D Center for inviting me to give this opening address. To begin, I want to highlight that the Seoul Design Foundation has a really great history since it was established back in 2008 by the Seoul Metropolitan Government. And this is for the purpose of improving the quality of life and enhancing design competitiveness. This is so perfect because through all of these years, the Seoul Design Foundation and WDO have had a very close and a very long-standing partnership in cooperating and together promoting design for a better world. As most of you know, Seoul was designated as a 2010 World Design Capital, and in July of that year was also celebrated as the first city in Korea to be named as a UNESCO Creative City of Design. For those of you who are not aware, WDO is the global body for industrial design. We have been using the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the UN SDGs, as a guideline to partner and work towards solving some of humanity's biggest challenges. So this means using the power of design as a fundamental tool to make communities and human settlements more inclusive, more safe, more resilient, and more sustainable. This year, 2022, is also a very special year for WDO because it is the 65th anniversary since the founding of ICSID, the International Council of Societies of Industrial Design, now known as WDO, the World Design Organization. So I want to take this opportunity to celebrate all together with the Seoul Design Foundation and with the Seoul Design Award Conference. Seoul has been recognized for its design excellence everywhere around the world. And South Korea has been recognized as one of the world's most innovative countries for many years. This highlights South Korea's great performance in R&D, which was developed through applied knowledge with close partnership and collaboration between the government, industry, and the academic community. The result has been a creation of global leadership in technology and innovation, in petrochemicals, car manufacturing, semiconductors, and consumer electronics. Design, of course, is a big part of that emergence, and it provides leadership to ensure that these technologies are more useful and more beneficial for people. It goes without saying that now more than ever before, designers need to prioritize accessibility, affordability, reliability, sustainability, and respect for the user and the environment. Design for a better world means placing human needs first and striking the right balance between people, planet, and economics. Cities and communities can no longer evolve and develop without the involvement of design playing a role at every level. Whether we are designing new spaces for public use, or improving infrastructure for better accessibility and mobility, or creating products and services to provide solutions for housing, food insecurity, and healthcare, designers, we must work in harmony with both the private and the public sectors to make a real difference. Collaboration is the new competitive advantage. It is bigger than one organization and even larger than one profession. An interdisciplinary approach that merges technology with human-centered design and with design thinking will allow design solutions to be the very best they can be. I'm so pleased to be here to represent the World Design Organization and to help celebrate the opening of the Seoul Design Award Conference. Congratulations to all of you. The Human City Design Award represents the very best in design, and it achieves the objective of dreaming of a better life with design. The WDO is very proud to be working with the Seoul Design Foundation to make the world a better place. I want to wish you all a wonderful conference and a wonderful celebration.
Thank you for your kind words and support. Now, we have a keynote speech, and let me tell you a little bit about today's keynote speaker. The story is legend, dressing up as an elderly person during her 20s to literally feel and learn about the inconvenience posed by our society. Patricia Moore, a world-renowned gerontologist and designer and CEO of the Moore Design Group, will give a presentation under the theme Dignity by Design, delivering lifespan solution for global equity and inclusion. And here it is.
Hello, I'm Dr. Patricia Moore, and I'm speaking to you from the capital city of the United States of America, Washington, D.C. It's my great honor to be with you to discuss dignity by design and how all of us who are involved in creation and development and delivery of everyday solutions for everyday living will go forward after the pandemic and into the future today. Next slide. I am the firstborn daughter in my family. I was raised in Buffalo, New York, very near Niagara Falls, a very cold and snowy climate. And as a little baby girl, my mother had no idea that I was walking until one day she looked out the window to see me holding tight to my very large dog, whose name was King. And slowly, King and I walked through the yard, and I took my first steps with my helpmate. That story always reminds me that in this life, none of us can manage alone. We must have tools and friends and family, products, environments, places, communities, and a culture that we call our own. Next slide. My beloved grandfather lived until his 95th year, and he too had a very special connection to his dog, Mr. Magoo. Now, Mr. Magoo looks like a tiny, sweet little dog, but I remember he was fierce and protective and loved my grandfather very much. And he was very needed by my grandfather, who couldn't walk without a wheelchair in late life. And together, these two friends spent many happy hours and loved the life that they shared. by design. Next slide. It occurs to me that this empathy might be the most important piece of the puzzle of life for design as we move forward and create a new normal. Next slide. When I was a young designer, I was honored to work with Raymond Loewy in New York City. And as a young designer, I also was the only woman working in the office as an industrial designer. And as I worked with my fellows, I would often ask if we couldn't spend more time considering the needs of our elders, considering the needs of people who had special requirements because of changes in their bodies and their abilities to do the things that we often take for granted when we're healthier and most definitely younger. I remember Mr. Loewy was fascinated when I came to him with an idea that even though I was only 26 at the time, if I could make myself look like an elder, I could travel the United States and Canada and learn firsthand how did it feel to be an older person living in a world that was designed by younger people for younger people. Next slide. And so Mr. Loewy gave me permission to take on this experiment in age and ability, so that as a designer, I could feel just what it would be like to be in the body of an elder. And with prosthetic makeup and devices that changed my body and its abilities, I was able to sense what the future might hold for us in late life. Next slide. I traveled to 116 cities over the next 4 years as 9 different elder women of different levels of health and wealth. Sometimes I used a wheelchair. Sometimes I traveled with a nurse. And I always found that each day was a challenge because of the failure of design. I made many friends, and I went to many funerals as their lives ended. And I almost lost my life when one day I was attacked and beaten by a gang of young thugs who stole my purse and found it a pleasure to attack me. They beat me so badly that when years later I married and tried to start a family, we found I couldn't have a child. And people will often say that must be the worst thing that happened when you were doing this research. But I'd have to argue no. The worst thing was every day when I couldn't independently manage the tasks of everyday living because of bad design. And so my career, my future as a designer was the result of this incredible research. Next slide. After this work, my focus became one to always consider the entire lifespan. Next slide. We all of us have a beginning, and we will all of us have an end. Next slide. And it's the designer who is responsible for making sure each of us always has the highest quality of life. Next slide. So all generations must be considered by design and contemplated by design, so that with deliberateness, we create dignity and capacity for all ages and all abilities by design. Next slide. This is lifestyle. The designer is able to envision and deliver a lifestyle that meets the needs and the dreams of every person in the world. Next slide. We've talked often about creating a very smart house, a house that understands our individual needs and meets them on a daily basis. This has been a dream for design since the first smart house was conceived in Chicago, Illinois, in the United States in 1933. Next slide. Today, smart houses are more and more possible thanks to material science and technologies that take on the daily chores and tasks that can be an encumbrance for some of us, difficult or impossible, and can meet the needs of a full house of family members of different ages and abilities. The promise of a smart house has finally arrived and is something that we are dreaming about on a global level, so that all people can have the equity and the quality of life they deserve. Next slide. I think the most exciting development in the dream of a smart house is the fact that appliances can be the heart of the home. And with smart appliances, we can tend to all of the needs of every consumer, from their nutritional needs to their communication desires and to the management of their medications and their health and their security and their wellness. The future is finally here today. Next slide. By design, we must always provide choice. Next slide. Choice for every member of our family, within every community and every culture all over the world. Whether it's a younger person or the elder, each of us will have very unique abilities and capacities and needs within our individual homes, but they must be designed so that simultaneously we can deliver on the promise of a high quality of life for the lifespan. Next slide. When we provide choice for consumers, they have control over the life they wish to lead. Next slide. So no matter what the composition of our family, how many friends, where we live, how we live, how much money we have or how much money we don't have, we can all live with the dignity delivered by design. Next slide. Accessibility is a major piece of the puzzle of life for design. Next slide. But mere accessibility is only half of the potential that design can deliver for all people. We might be able to get from one place to another, but how well can we function within an environment? How well can we use the products in that environment? That is the bigger problem and the bigger opportunity for design beyond accessibility. Next slide. We have to look at usability. How easy is it to use all the things that surround us and all the things we have yet to design? Next slide. Near the end of his life, Professor Hawking was asked, what do we humans need in order to survive, in order to thrive? And he gave a one-word answer. Next slide. He spoke of the importance of empathy. He spoke of changing what has been a medical model of aging to a model of aging that was more about being a consumer. Next slide. A medical model of aging gives us equipment and products that, while doing the job and being semi-usable, don't deliver on the promise of dignity, aesthetics, joy. Next slide. When we design for a consumer and not for a patient, we can embrace what all of us hopes for, and that is a joyous, dignified quality of life by design. Next slide. So when we design a humane and holistic environment of products within our homes and within our communities, looking at all of the diverse needs of all of the consumers on the planet, then we meet our desires and our dreams for equity and equality for all. Next slide. The UN and the World Health Organization have recently begun the decade of healthy aging. One of the most important aspects of looking for healthy aging for the entire planet is the delivery of good and smart design. Next slide. Design that brings to each and every one of us a good life, no matter what our age or our level of ability, for all of us as equal. Just like snowflakes, no two of us are alike. We're all unique, and we're all beautiful and deserving of design. Next slide. When we were little children, our parents told us to hold hands and stay together. And that's exactly what design must do today. Design must hold the hand of every consumer and tell them how important they are and how responsible we are for the delivery of their dreams and the lifestyle that they deserve. Next slide. By design, all of our wishes can come true. And by design, the responsibilities of sustainability for the planet, equity for all people, and quality of this life, no matter how many years or how few, by design, we can make dreams come true. Next slide. So remember, hold hands from day one to day none. It's a wonderful life because of design and by design. Next slide. Thank you so very much for the honor of being with you for this very vital and important meeting. And I look forward to hopefully being with you again in Korea, one of the most beautiful places on the planet, full of my favorite people and friends. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Moore, for your keynote. I think it would be a great idea to have a more in-depth conversation on this very topic, on dignity by design, delivering lifespan solutions for global equity and inclusion that was just spoken on the keynote address. Now, here are some of the questions I'd like to ask you, Dr. Moore. The first question, as a young age in your 20s, it would not have been easy to put the thoughts of dressing up as an elderly person in their 80s into an action. So what gave you the courage to put it into practice?
I think my courage came from the fact that I was so young. I really couldn't have understood how dangerous the research would be, how difficult it would be, and how sad it would be to be shown discrimination by ageism, something that our elders all over the world each and every day face with their own bravery. It's a very difficult thing to be ignored and dismissed by your fellow citizens just because of your age or what your ability level is. And I'm grateful that I was so angry by the unkind cruelty of other people and how they acted towards me with their ageism, that it made me want to keep doing the research and learning more and more and more. Because if I had just done it for a short while, I don't think we would have had the level of universal design and inclusive design that we have today as a result. So I'm very glad that I had no idea what it was like to be an elder until I became an elder.
Certainly, that very experience have given you a lot of wisdom and insights. And as you have mentioned from the keynote, there's quite a few cases where you had been very, so to speak, dangerous condition or dangerous situation. And I was wondering if you could give a word of encouragement to those designers who feel the need to change society and have the heart to help people, but having a hard time putting it into actual action.
I wish I could hug every young designer today who needs the encouragement and the mentorship of other designers and engineers and architects and politicians, the whole complement of leadership behind creation and design. Because it is difficult when you have an idea, when you have a dream, and you have to convince other people of how important it is, not just to you, but because you know it's going to change the world. So I hope you know that I understand the fear and the frustration, the disappointment, the desire to make this world a better place. I know every day when we wake to the sad news in world politics, we often wonder, what can I do? One person, what can I do to make the world a better place? But just remember, the answer is in the question. One person can change the world. So be brave, be strong, dream big, and always, always know how important one person is to changing this world for the better.
As I've mentioned, one person can change the world, and I wish all the people who are watching this very conference could get a bravery, just like her. And also, hopefully you can actually come here to give a hug to every single young designer out there. And next question I have for you is, how can design change the daily lives of people in different situations and with different needs?
Design has the ultimate responsibility to always remember every citizen around the world, wherever they live, has their own unique capacity. Maybe they live in a grand home or a very modest home, or maybe they don't have a home, but they are still a citizen of the world, and they deserve the definition of design in their lives. And so each designer has to do as much as they possibly can to understand this equity and fight for the equality of all people. We have to stay involved. We have to volunteer our time. We have to work with our head and our hearts in unison, not just maybe at our job, but even volunteering well beyond the aspect of what we do in our daily work, and broaden our scope of delivery by design so that all people all over the world can have the dignified life they deserve, that each of us dreams about.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Certainly, you have shown the power of design and how it can influence our daily lives. And lastly, for those who are watching this conference, Seoul Design Award Conference, would you like to say a few words for them?
This past summer, I talked with a young Korean design student here in the United States. He had finished his studies and he was going to be going home. I met his parents. I gave his mother a hug. I told her how happy I was for their son's success. I could see the pride on the faces of this young man's parents. But more than that, I saw in this young man's eyes the belief that he had been trained and he had been given the gift of an education to be a designer so that he could make the world a better place. I believe that dream with my entire being, and I look forward to seeing what that young designer does and what all of us designers do as we face difficult challenges, often what appear to be unsurmountable needs, so that we can go well beyond the nonsense of a polarized political world and deliver on the promise of a good life, always by design. Thank you so much, and I hope everyone is enjoying a very wonderful conference and beyond.
Thank you, Dr. Moore, for your keynote speech and those valuable answers to our questions. Now, it's the first session under the theme Carrying Design, starting to exert good influence. Each session will begin with a presentation on issue awareness, looking at the issues in our daily lives, and consists of presentations on creative solutions to those problems we acknowledge. So this first session will be moderated by Professor Kon Na. And let us invite Professor Na as a moderator and speakers for the session. Reporter Hyung Do Nam from Money Today News Agency, Johan Carlson, CEO of Better Shelter, Adam Choi, Social Impact Director of Dot Incorporated, and Taegyun Ko, the representative of Soif Studio. So please welcome them. And now let me give the floor to Professor Na.
예, 그럼 지금부터
Hello.
세션
Now we'd like to get started with session 1.
배려하는 디자인
Session 1's theme is Carrying Design, Starting to Exert Good Influence.
네 분의 연설을
And we have 4 presenters with us today.
디자인이기 때문에 시작은 문제의 인식으로부터 시작을 해서
So it starts with looking at problem recognition, and then it goes into solutions in the areas of refuge, challenge, and participation.
이름으로 불리우는
Now,
사람들에 대한
let's take a look at our first presentation titled Attitude Towards People Being Called by Other Names to Become Other People. It will be given by Mr. Nam Young-do, who's a journalist at Money Today. Please welcome him with a big hand.
네, 안녕하세요.
Hello.
머니투데이의 남영도
As
기자라고
introduced, my
합니다.
name is Nam Hyung-do. I'm a journalist at Money Today. It's very nice to meet you.
저는 강아지 이야기로 먼저 시작을
So I'd like to
해보겠습니다.
start by with a story of a dog. So it's a dog in a rural area in the province of Gangwon, and the dog's name is Mongsu. You see his pointy
몸집에 비해서는
ears
좀 다소 짧은 다리,
and
그리고
short legs compared to his
장난감
body.
중에 이렇게 귀를 젖히면서 웃는 모양이
And he
모습이
smiles when he's
귀여운
given a new toy
강아지이죠.
with his ears flipped
근데
back. It's very
장난감을
cute.
좀 더 과격하게 놀다가 이렇게 쉽게 좀 찢어놓기도 하고.
But of course, he would get too excited over his toy that he would eventually rip it apart. So once again, this is Mongsun, a dog in a rural area.
강원도의 산에 그
So Mongsun lives in a mountainous area in the province of Gangwon-do. And I'd like to talk about his life.
짧은 목줄에 묶여서
So Mongsun actually is tied to a short leash that is about 1.5 meters long.
보시는 것처럼 쇠사슬에 묶여가지고 거의 하루 종일 그리고
And
그 다음 날도 이제 똑같이
Mongsun has to live in the same place day after day being tied by this leash.
계속 같은 곳만 바라보고
And so Mongsun can only enjoy
지나가는 아이들이나 이렇게 와서
the same environment every day. And once children come by and says hello to him, he's elated. He wags his tail. He gets on his 2 feet. But once these children leave, as you can see in the third picture, he gets dejected once again. And he just lies down on the ground, waiting for someone or trying to listen to
가만히 엎드려 있습니다.
sounds.
근데 멍순이는 이 산책을 좀 많이 하면은 그래도 좀 좋을 텐데.
Now, I'm sure things would be better for Mongsun if he can enjoy
이 겨울에는
walks. But the thing is, I visited this place in winter, and the dog's owner told me that Mongsun was not able to take a walk for the past 3 months. So, in other words, he was tied to this place for 3 whole months.
같은 환경에서 한번
But one day,
멍순이는 하루를 한번 나도 짐작을 해보고 싶다. 멍순이가 어떻게 지내는지에 대해서
someone
체험을
has this idea.
생각이 들었어요.
I want to experience the life of Mongsun.
사진에서 보시는 것처럼
And so, as you can see
짧은
in the
목줄을
picture, the person tied a short leash around his ankle.
1m의 목줄이
It's a bit shorter than Mongsun's leash. It's about 1 meter long.
다음에
And after being tied by this leash,
단한 번도 이제 누군가가 멍순이 하루가 어떨지에 대해서 생각을
the
못
man
했었는데
lives the life of Mongsun and contemplates how this life must be for the dog.
것처럼 멍순이의 옆에서
So as you can see,
줄에 묶였습니다.
he is tied to this short leash next to Mongsun. Mongsun looks rather puzzled. Who is he?
옆에 와서
Why did he suddenly show up? And why is he also tied to a leash?
종족은 아닌 것 같은데 뭐 이렇게 생각을
He doesn't look like the same species as I am. So Mongsun seems to think that. And the moment
생전 이제 좀 처음 구속이라는 거
when this person was tied to a leash, it's the first time that this man has actually experienced being bound by
1m 반경의
a rope, and he is not able to travel outside of the radius of 1
결국에는 이제 할
meter.
수 있는 게 없다 보니까
And he goes around and
그냥
around,
가만히
and
자리에
eventually he
앉아
has nothing to do, so he just
그냥 누워
sits
있거나
down and stares off to the
이때는
space or
굉장히 또
just
추운
lies down on the
겨울이었다고
ground. And
합니다.
again, this was
그래서
very
영하 한 10도
cold
정도의
winter, and the
추위에서도
temperature went
거의 할
down
수 있는 게
to
없으니까
minus 10 degrees
이제
Celsius. And
멍순이를 약간 떨어져 있는 상태에서 주위의 풍경을 가만히 그냥 계속
he
바라보고
just stared off in the
계속
empty
이제 하루
space
종일
and
같은
tried
걸
to see
바라보고
what he
있다
could
보니까
find in this mundane
여기에
environment
있는 좋은 풍경,
next to the
강원도의
monsoon.
이제 산, 강 이런 풍경들까지 하나하나 다 외우게 될 정도로
And he
지루한 하루를
looked at the
보내면서
environment and
견디게
studied
되는
them so hard that he could basically,
바라보고
with his
있는
eyes
걸
closed,
매일
still
똑같은
see
풍경을
the
바라보고
mountains and
있다는
rivers
거에
of Gangwon
대해서
province. And
멍순이는 그냥
looking
매일
at the
이런 하루를
same environment
견뎠겠구나
every
라는
day is
생각을
not
처음
an easy
할수
task,
있게
and
됩니다.
that is the life of Mongsun.
그 다음에 이제 멍순이를 3개월, 4개월 만에
And so, for the first time in 3 to 4
나이가
months,
2-3살 정도밖에
Mongsun
되지
goes
않는 강아지였기
on
때문에
a walk.
에너지가 엄청 넘쳐요.
He's only 2 to 3 years old, so he's very energetic.
계속 같은
But
자세로만 이제 앉아 있다가
he had to stay at a single place for a very long time.
시간이 지난 다음에 처음 산책을 나가게 돼요.
But after a long period of time during which a season has changed, he goes out for a walk and he's very excited. You can see him jumping
잡아 끌어요. 빨리빨리 가자고 이제
and he yanks on the leash of the man who was sitting next to him. And the time was limited, so the man really wanted Mongsun to be able to enjoy everything that he can, smell more things, see more things. And this man, too, was tied up from morning to afternoon, and he was finally able to walk after half a day, and he realizes that the freedom of being able to go anywhere you please is very precious. Mongsun is a dog, like I said earlier, and therefore he cannot speak in the human language. And therefore, no one really thought about how the life must be for this little dog.
멍순이는 사실 이 사람이 아침에 처음에 자기 발목에 줄을 묶을 때부터
So since the time when the man was tied next to him, Mongsun kept begging the man to play with him. But for the first time after taking that walk, Mongsun, under the afternoon sunlight, dozes off to sleep. So he's finally let go of all the energy that's been pent up inside of him, enjoying the various sceneries. And after exhausting all that energy, he's able to sleep comfortably. And the man finally goes home. And Mongsun, seeing that the man who has stayed with him for half a day tries to follow him. You can see that in the video. He keeps spinning around in circles, but Mongsun is tied in that place. He can never go far off from that area. So it's very unfortunate. So you probably realize this already, but the person who was tied next to Mongsun was me. I'm a journalist, but experiencing the life of Mongsun made me realize a lot of things. How the life must be for this dog who can't speak, and how frustrated he must have felt by being tied up with a short rope. And many dogs in rural areas of Korea are tied up like this. Koreans have this traditional perception of dogs, that dogs are meant to protect the house, and therefore they have to be raised outside of people's home. But I believe that this might be the first time for a human being to try to surmise the life of such rural dogs. So I stayed with Mongsun until 6 p.m. And I wrote a story about that very experience. And it's titled Being Tied by a 1-meter Leash. I spent the day like a dog in a rural area.
이 기사가 나간 다음에 사람들이
And after the story was released, people began to leave comments, many comments, as a matter of fact.
독자들의 반응이 그렇더라고요. 이게
And
다 지나가다가 우연히
the readers say
본 적은 많이
that
있었지만
they've
그 강아지의 하루가 얼마나
passed by many of these dogs that were tied with short leash, but they never thought about how frustrated the dog must have felt. If they can just make the leash longer, or if they can give these dogs a regular walk, that would improve the life of these dogs. So that's the kind of things that our readers realized. And some readers empathize with Mongsun's circumstances that they teared up. And another reader said that there is a dog being raised like Mongsun in his or her grandmother's house, and after reading this article, he or she asked the grandmother to untie the leash and gave the dog a walk. Now, this relates to the topic of what I want to talk about today in my presentation. So there are people, and not just people, but life beings whose lives we do not know exactly. Our own experiences are very limited, and therefore we can only try to surmise the lives of those who are different from us. And trying to surmise the lives of others is the very act of human beings, said a writer once. So I wanted to spread the story and raise empathy and raise interest, which might gradually improve the lives of these other beings. And you might wonder why I decided to do such experiment. So of course, I didn't start out as a journalist who writes these types stories on these types of experiences, but when I was a trainee reporter, I met someone who is physically challenged. It was a woman, and she one day suddenly suffered from cerebral infarction, and a part of her body was paralyzed and she had to be wheelchaired. And she told me this: you know what? I wish they'd put everyone with disabilities in one place and euthanize them all together. And once again, I was just a trainee reporter, and I was so shocked. So I have no idea what the life could be for these people because I don't have any disabilities. And to me, they look perfectly healthy and their lives look fine. But according to what she said, I really realized that their lives are full of challenges and difficulties, and I wanted to write a good story about this to spread the story to other people. And I thought about the best way to do this. And the method that I chose was to rent a wheelchair and to go around in it. So of course, I was interested in people with disabilities, and there are many stories that cover lives of these people, but none of those reporters actually took this approach. So I wanted to make a differentiated approach, and the moment I sat on the wheelchair and I went out to the roads, and a new world unfolded in front of me. I never really thought twice about whether a road is evenly paved or not, or whether there is a ramp or just stairs. But I realized that after riding a wheelchair that many of the roads are unevenly paved, and that I was unable to access less than half of the stores or restaurants that I wanted to go to. They were in underground floors, or sometimes they were in the second floor, which did not provide any elevators. And you can see in the picture this ramp that leads up to a store. And this ramp might seem to have a moderate slope, But if you actually try to go climb that up with a wheelchair, it's very steep. Your wheelchair will actually roll backward. And let's take a look at the bus stop signs. When I was standing up, I had no trouble reading the signs, but when I was sitting on a wheelchair, I had to tilt my head up to barely read the signs. So this was the first experience of its kind for me. And when I tried to go into a large supermarket, as you can see in the third picture, the accessways were only escalators or stairs. So usually when I'm walking, it would take me only about a minute or two to go up the stairs. But I had to turn back, go to the elevator, go up, walk across the pedestrian walk, and then go down the underground once again with a different elevator. And that took me about 15 to 20 minutes, 5 to 6 times more than what it would usually take me. So after the story was released, these were the comments that people wrote. Even when seeing people riding on wheelchairs, I never realized how difficult their lives could be. So it never occurred to them how difficult the lives of these people might be. But anyone can develop disabilities. And therefore, this gave me an opportunity for self-reflection, said another reader. And another reader also commented that this never occurred to me because I really couldn't relate and it was none of my business. And there was another comment written by someone who is physically challenged, quote, "You can't ride a wheelchair alone. My life is very difficult." So once again, this experience gave us a new enlightening moment. So let's say we're riding on a subway, and usually this is what we see. We would go into the doorway and sit down on the seats and get up and alight from the subway when we reach our destination. But this is a different view seen from that subway. This is actually the same subway, but it's a view that is seen through the eyes of the operator of that subway. So I actually sat next to the operator or the engineer of this subway to look at this view. And the reason why I wrote this story is because at the time, the engineers of subways, many of them committed suicide, complaining of post-traumatic disorder, and so on. And so I wanted to also cover that story. And when I went inside the engineering room, by the way, this is subway line number 5 in Korea. And subway line number 5 travels underground 100%. It never goes above ground. And if you keep looking at the underground scene, that actually kind of gives you a feeling of being suffocated. At least that's what I felt. So I never realized this when I was in the passenger train. So only when you're in that other person's shoes, you will be able to empathize with them. Now, this is the scene of a typical security guard office in apartments here in Korea. And if the light is on in the office, you just naturally assume that the security guard is there. And that's about it. Nothing more ever occurs to you. Most of us live in the apartment houses, and security guards live in their own offices. So even though we live close to each other, we never really know what their experiences is. So I actually took a day to spend in the security guard office, and what struck me is that I have to go to sleep at night, but people keep passing by. Even until late at night, a resident of that apartment keep passing by that I can't get a deep sleep, although I have to wake up at 4 a.m. the next day. And the noise of delivery motorcycles kept waking me up as well, so I could not get a quality sleep. So I live in an apartment myself, but I never realized this. And plus, because there is a window, light kept streaming through the window, not just the sunlight, but also the street lamp light. So again, I couldn't get a quality sleep. So while getting a sleep in this security guard office, I realized many new things. Then do these security guards not have a lounge? Yes, they do. But the reason why I took a sleep here is because this is the lounge for the security guards. Just by taking a glance at it, you can see that the environment is very poor. And you can basically, there's no toilet here. So the toilet is that concrete paved floor that's in the middle. And I did try to sleep here, but the security guard just said, matter of factly, there are rats here. And once I tried to get a sleep here, the rat stepped over me. So if it's okay with you, you can still go to sleep here. But of course, I didn't feel that was okay, so I was scared of the rats. And so I decided to take a sleep in the security guard office, not the lounge. And thus, once again, that leads back to the story of which I talked about, that I could not get a quality sleep. When someone passes away, this is the kind of scene that we see. It's a funeral house. We go there to deliver our condolences and take a bow and say goodbye to them. So this is as far as we know when someone passes away. But after someone passes away, what would happen to their houses left behind? Let's say someone lives alone and that someone passes away. Then traces of that person's living would remain in the house. And when that person who dies in loneliness is not discovered early enough, his body would decay and it would reek. And after 1 week or 2 weeks, the smell would seep out of the house. And that's only when the residents realize that someone has died in the house. And I had that experience. This person was in his 50s and he was watching the TV while lying down on a sofa and suddenly passed away. And the traces of his life could be found everywhere in his house. In his calendar, in March 24th, it was marked the birthday of a fool. So he marked the birthday of someone in the calendar. And that house was filled with maggots that had already died. Then who is going to clean that up? There should be people who clean out a house after someone has passed away. So there are people with this profession. They actually take down the wallpapers and also the floor paper, and they use special chemical to eradicate the smell. And if there are traces of urine, for example, on the mattress, as you can see on the picture, they would cut that out. And I actually joined them to clean this place, and that smell, it was the first time for me to smell such a scent. And it was summer, and we could not open the window because if the smell goes out the window and if the residents can smell it, they will complain. And so therefore, we had to wear masks and keep the windows shut. It was a challenging work. And after we were finished with the work, we finally opened the window. And it felt as if the house that had died was revived once again. So, when a new apartment is built, that could be a very exciting moment for someone. A new apartment, a new house for me, that's a very exciting moment. But for some people, They might be scared of having new apartments built. Who could that be?
우편물을 배달해야 하는 집배원님이 계시죠.
There are people who have to deliver the mail to that new apartment.
그 아파트가 늘어나면 세대가 늘어나고 배달해야 될 물량 자체가 굉장히 많아지는데
When there are new apartments built, there will be more number of mails naturally, but the post office is not going to hire someone new right away. So every time the mailman passes by the construction site of a new apartment being built, he feels fear of what is to come. So once again, the number of mails would increase, but the number of people who have to deliver them would stay the same. So once again, I experienced the life of a mailman, and you have to basically take 2 to 3 steps at a time when you're walking up the stairs in order to finish your work for the day. And these people are the ones who are well versed in the small streets and every corners of that residence. They basically have the map in their head. And so someone cannot do the work for them. So if they cannot do their job, someone else can't 100% fill in for them. And then sometimes while they're working, the mailman would die from overworking. So while engaging in many experiences, I say this, by the way, I stayed in the cage of a bear for an entire day. And to this bear, I said this: if I didn't know that this was just an experience, I wouldn't have endured this day. So the time is still ongoing for these beings. This bear is still locked up in the cage, and it's showing abnormal behavior because it's locked up all day. It's swiveling its head right to left, or just circles around the cage. It's showing stereotyped behavior. So I wish someone would suspend that time for these beings. This bird smacked into a glass wall and died. Now we have soundproof walls made of glass in the streets. I'm sure you've seen them, but the birds do not realize that there's a glass wall there and smack into these glasses and die. So how can we stop this? With design. We can stop this with design. So only by putting these dots on glass walls at an interval of 5 centimeters high and 10 centimeters wide, the birds do not approach these glasses because they know something is there. So in the past, 8 million birds used to die annually by crashing into these glass walls, but we were able to save more than 90% of them. And now this cat died from roadkill. How can we save this cat? I wish we can save this cat with the power of design. Now, the team working for animal welfare in Gangdong District Office put up this post, and you can see that next to the pedestrian walk sign, there is also a sign for the cats, and it says, "Slow, watch out for roadkill." So by just slowing down the speed of our car, we can save the lives of stray cats. And when pregnant women use public transportation, it could be very challenging. So how can we make sure that they can be guaranteed of a seat? Thanks to design, we were able to provide that to pregnant women. Seoul Metropolitan Government did that by using this color pink, which grabs your attention, to a certain seat reserved for pregnant women. And through this kind of design attempts and efforts, we were able to change the lives of people. And today we still have someone who lives in this world with us, whose lives we do not know of. So caring for them, being empathetic of their lives, would allow us to wield the power to change our lives, especially through design. And with that, I'd like to conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nam. The beginning of the design is recognizing the current situation, and in order to recognize the problem, we need to identify the problem, and we also need to have a new perspective in order to recognize and identify the problems. You're not a professional designer, but you shared your perspective. Thank you very much. And we would like to move on to the second presentation from the person who are joined online. We have Mr. Joan Carson. The presentation title is Prefabricated Houses for Refugees, a Better Shelter.
Hi, everybody. It's great and an honor to be with you online. Would have loved to be with you in Seoul. I hope there will be other opportunities in the future. So over the next few 10 minutes, I would want to talk to you about humanitarian design and what we as designers can do in the humanitarian space and what challenges that entail. So first of all, my name is Johan Karlsson and I'm a Swedish industrial designer. I'm also the managing director of the Swedish non-profit organization Better Shelter. And the purpose and the sole purpose of Better Shelter is to develop, to design, and to provide temporary shelter solutions for people who have been forced to flee. So I would then like to start just there in the context where we work to give you some perspectives. So let me first get the screen up for us. All right, now let's go. So I think my first question here will be for you to imagine that you are about to leave your home. You need to leave within the next 24 hours. You can only bring what you can carry. So what would you bring? And how would you feel about it? And where would you go? This is questions that raises unease. And it's the reality of millions of people today. I've asked myself that questions many times. What if I was in this position that would need to leave my home, to flee, either by conflict or natural disaster? Well, I would probably first try to call my friends. Let's assume I had to leave Stockholm, the city where I'm living. I think my first preference would be to call my friends in the other parts of Sweden, the country I'm in, to see if I can stay with them. And if that would not be possible, then likely I would try to seek refuge in friends that I'm having in Europe, Southern Europe, etc. Maybe I can stay on the couch on the sofas for some time. And if not, well, maybe I would need to reach out to my friends all over in Korea or in the US to seek a place to stay. But as the really last resort, I would want to flee and end up in a temporary accommodation. And yet, this is the grim option of millions of people today. And when I started to work with humanitarian relief, I'm a designer by training. Before I did humanitarian projects, I was doing interior design, and electric devices like many designers. But when I started to work in the humanitarian space, this is some more than 10 years ago, I learned that there were more than 45 million people at that time displaced by war natural disasters. 45 million people. I mean, this is the population almost of South Korea. And how do we deal with that for those people who cannot seek any refuge with their friends or with their relatives and that need to flee? At this image, you are seeing children in a temporary camp in northwestern Syria. These type of tented camps are really the last resort when people have no other options, nowhere else to go. And we as humanitarians need to provide temporary shelter. As you see, this is far from safe and dignified. And this is not a unique situation. Millions of people around the world are living like this, or even worse. And we may think that this forced displacement is a temporary thing. It is not. The average duration of displacement is more than 20 years. So what that means is that not only do people flee and are forced to stay in camp setting like this, they actually need to live there. They grow up there, they marry, they get kids. So this feeling we're having as temporarity is not often true. Often people stay for much, much longer, but we are not entitled to provide them anything more than what is the most needed, the most urgent solutions. So as a designer, this is what I could not get my head around back in 2010 when I started to work with this issue. And I asked myself, as I said, there must be a better way for us to do this. So very long story short, I joined forces with IKEA Foundation, you know, IKEA, the Swedish fat pack furniture giant, and the United Nations Refugee Agency to come together and think, what could we do? With modern manufacturing design, I'm sure we can develop something which is better, more safe, more dignified, that lasts longer. And we did divide what we called the relief housing units, which you're seeing here in the images. These are shelters that come just as IKEA furniture, flat packed in a box with all the tools that you need to assemble them yourselves. And since the start now, since we had developed this solution in 2015, we have provided more than 80,000 shelters across more than 70 countries. And to give you the scope, is what you're seeing here. This is an image of one, almost like a city that we have built of temporary shelters in Idlib in Syria. This is more than 3,000 units, and it was built in less than 3 months. Just to illustrate that life and how life goes on in this temporary setting, I want to show you this one. I mentioned to you before that people do live here. It's not only temporary. This is a wedding photography that we had from one of our camps in Iraq. So I want to just get across this, that while we're designing for something that is temporary, that can be quick to deploy and quick to set up in emergency, many people here are forced, they have no other choice than to live here for a very long time. And as a designers, that longevity we need to have in mind. Now, I'm very, very proud of what we have achieved together. 80,000 shelters provided. It is a good number. But we are only reaching not the top of the iceberg here. We are reaching like a snowflake on the iceberg. If you remember how many people are displaced. I told you it was 4 to 5 million people when I started out in this space. Today, we are seeing displacement of more than 100 million people, twice the population of South Korea. And if we're looking ahead with climate change and what that will impact us, we are looking to have around 200 million people displaced by 2050, likely worse. So as designers, we have a lot of things to do there. And this is where we try to address this at Better Shelter as well. We find even more effective methods than we have done. And what I would like to show you very quickly is something that relies more on co-creation and co-design than what we have done before. So not only shipping pre-designed complete structures, we are now more and more providing pre-designed core structures, frames, that you can use to build a house from. But you do build and you do source the final materials for the walls and the roofing and the openings locally. Because this is a way where we can save cost and help more people. And just as a perspective, the Better Shelter solution that I showed, the relief housing unit you saw in the previous slide, they're around 1,500 euros each. This one is less than 25% of that cost, right? The structure. And how does this help people that are forced to flee? Well, we do set it up. And just as the other shelter we're having, out of the manual, out of the box, you get all the parts you need. You don't require any tools, but you get a safe structure that you can belong to. Now, what we do then is that we wrap it in a plastic sheeting, as you can see here to the left, which you can say it looks very temporary. It's just like a tent. Well, that is true, because it serves the purpose during the emergency, during the first 6 months. But what this structure does differently is that you can upgrade it with local materials that usually become available. So not only serving people, remember that the average duration is more than 20 years. So unlike a tent, with this structure solution, you can build onto what you're having and you can upgrade it. And you can use local materials and local skills to reinforce it. Some examples from India. And here we can see a woman upgrading her structure shelter with mud. Again, it's cheaper, it's more low cost, it drives the local economy, it drives the local community and gets them involved in the conflict, in the temporary shelter. Another example, same concept, we're providing structures. This is from Rwanda, where a team now here are setting up with locally available materials, corrugated steel and bamboo in this case. And another example here is from India, from Delhi. We have worked together with an organization, Seeds, to provide temporary schools. So this is one way that we are hoping now to reach even more people, that we can do it for lower cost and also build the local communities. We will continue to provide complete prefabricated solutions. That is for sure. In many cases, there are no alternatives available. You don't have local materials, local markets that you can source from. But when you have, this is a way of doing it. And as designers, this changes our role a lot. From prescribing a ready-made solution to actually more be part of, as a facilitator and a co-designer of this developing a building and working and relying very much on the local expertise of the people who will use them. So I think that is what we are doing in a nutshell. This was short. I hope it made sense to all of you, just to get a glimpse of what we're doing. If you want more information about Better Shelter or humanitarian design, please pop by our website, bettershelter.org. You have much more information there. And with that, I would like to say thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Johan, for your presentation. 앞으로 뭐 기후 변화라든지 뭐
So climate change
발생할 수 있는
or any other types of refugees moving to different places because of political circumstances, we would have to provide them with better conditions for living. And thank you for sharing the prime example of that. And next, we would like to invite Ms. Aram Choi, who's a social impact director at Dot Inc. And her presentation is titled, I can see not through an eye, but through dot-pad. Hello, I'm a social impact director at Dot Inc. We are a technology-based social venture startup, and we use technologies to include those who are socially vulnerable, and we try to make transportation, education, resident and cultural infrastructure into barrier-free. And after we were incorporated in 2016, we launched what is called Dot Cell, and we also launched a Dot Watch for who are visually impaired, and again that led to Dot Mini, Dot Pad, and ultimately to Dot Kiosk. Let me tell you why we got started in this business. First of all, I think we need to have a better understanding on the visually impaired. We have a total of 285 million visually impaired across the world, and there are 260,000 of them in Korea. And the statistics might not make you feel all that feel different about visually impaired, but for me personally, when I heard the fact that 93.2% of the visually impaired acquired their disability, that actually struck me. So by we're talking about people acquire this disability after the age of 5. So through our technology, we are making things, we're changing things for the visually impaired. And in the market, there were two big issues that we wish to solve. SDG. So the Sustainable Development Goals, and goal number 4 is quality education. So this book is a Bible, a Braille Bible. So we would take these Braille Bibles to churches or Catholic churches, but these are too heavy and they're very thick, and you cannot take these to actual churches. And in the past, or in fact in the past 15 years, there haven't been many changes in this market because of limitations to technologies. And SDG number 10 and number 11 are about reduced inequalities and sustainable cities and communities. And it's about the right to mobility for these people with disabilities. So they say that people with disabilities and the transportation vulnerables are 15.09 million here in Korea. But who are the transportation vulnerables? They're not just people with disabilities, but actually all of us were the transportation vulnerable when we were little kids, when we became parents, and when we are accompanied by little children or with the elderly. We all become transportation vulnerables in that situation. And so what kind of society should we make that includes these people with disabilities and transportation vulnerables? Now, these are pictures that we took ourselves. I think this issue was addressed by reporter Nam earlier in his presentation. But let's take a look at first the Braille map on the left top part of the screen. So I only want to go to the women's bathroom on the first floor, but I have to run my fingers through the entire map in order to locate the women's bathroom, which is a very big challenge for the visually impaired. And the Braille blocks that are installed on the streets, they're very difficult to find. And also the kiosks that are being offered in many places these days are very difficult to use, not only for the elderly, but those who are physically impaired because of their height. So let's take a look at how these problems are being resolved. Let me share a news outlet report to that end.
못 눌러서 자리 이동을 해서 한 적이 있습니다.
Please choose the quantity. So I keep pressing the kiosk, but I don't know whether I pressed that correctly or not. Do you get it? No, not at all. This is just a wall. It was impossible for me to use it. So did I just order 15? Oh, okay, I see. So the kiosk is just a simple wall. And it's actually a wall that prevents us from going to the outside world. We need appropriate keys and they need audio guidance. And of course, if Braille is added, that would be wonderful. So let's take a look at what we've been inventing. So our key technology is the Braille translation engine. So it's a software that can convert text to Braille. It supports 13 country languages to date. And next, we also have the world's smallest tactile cell. So compared to the existing cells, the price is only a quarter of that. So it's cell made out of coil, and therefore that helped us to reduce the cost and therefore create many innovations. And the unmanned kiosks, bank ATMs, digital signages, these cells are used in various applications. So when these 4 cells are put together, we can make a watch for the visually impaired. And if we put 20 of them together, we can read ebook reader. And the readers are equipped with such engine that the visually impaired would be able to read the signages with audio guidance. So our devices actually raise the accessibility for the visually impaired. So in order to solve the challenges that were mentioned before, we wanted to take lead, and we are actually taking lead in providing more education to the visually impaired. So we have many signs and maps in this world, but the visually impaired cannot access them. So we actually launched DotPad, which allows these images to be converted into Braille images. So you can actually process the pictures like this to create dot-based images so as to help children with visual impairment to get a comprehension of those images. And we also want to make things smart, not only kiosks, but subways and trains. We want to make all of them barrier-free. We want them to be accessible to those with and without disabilities. And we're making efforts to that end. And therefore, that's why we created the barrier-free kiosk. So it's a kiosk for people with and without disabilities, and it's installed in 25 public facilities to date. You can basically touch the maps, and if people who are in the wheelchairs or children approach the kiosk will be ordered. And so basically this is a customized kiosk for various needs. And this is not just a message that is delivered by my company, but the government actually declared its plan for digital inclusion. And the government has been making many efforts to provide more services to people who are with disability. And hence that has led to the more launching or more implementation of such kiosks. So this is just a brief history of the company. But what we've felt over the years is that there is still a long way to go. It's just the beginning, not just for Korea, but also for the globe. We actually want people, whether they have disability or not, to be able to go to school, get a job, have access to public places like art museums and science museums. And that's the task that is given to us today, and that's the task we are trying to tackle. So as a social venture equipped with modern technology, we will exert our utmost effort to this end, and we will try to spread the good influence across the globe. That concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you, Ms. Che, for the presentation.
눈으로 한 80 내지 90% 정도의 정보를
So we actually collect our 80 to 90% our information with our eyes, they say, but there are many barriers for people with these kind of disabilities that you talked about. But thank you for coming up with innovative solutions to allow people with disabilities to absorb the information.
So the last presenter is from Seoul Studio, and Mr. Taeyeon Ko will make a presentation under the title For the Independence of Youth Who Wishes to Stand on Their Own Feet. Good afternoon. My name is Ko Dae-hyun from Seoul Studio. First, thank you very much for this opportunity to make this presentation. First of all, I would like to talk about the youth who are preparing for standing on their own feet. Do you know about them? They stay in group home, cohabitation, foster house, and orphanage. And once they reach 18 years old, then the protection will be ended. So they need to stand on their own feet in the society. Every year, 2,000 to 2,500 of young people are coming to the society. And there are many reasons they live in these systems. Sometimes they lose their parents, sometimes their parents abandon them, and due to the economic situation, they stay there, and due to the abuse or crime, they are staying in the system. And the Seoul Studio is supporting these young people so that they can stand on their feet. And their independence is not based on the support of other people. Rather, we would like to make them understand and recognize they need to stand on their feet. So we started out our studio from one orphanage. We started a volunteer activity. And once a month, we get together and we took photos together, and we also created good memories. And we also use the photos, and we taught them how to edit the photos, and we also hosted an exhibition. After about 3 years, the young student grew up. So some of them grew up from middle school students to high school students and even to adults. So we realized that what kind of reality they are faced with after coming out of the system, and they had no furniture or home appliances. They can have only a couple of clothes, and they can use the duvet. And we were very saddened about that. Moreover, they are young in the society, and since they are from the orphanage, sometimes they are discriminated from the office, and they're exposed to crime, and they experience economic difficulties, and sometimes some of them gave up their own life because of their loneliness. So my colleagues wanted to help them. So we thought that there are something we can do, and that's why we created the SOIF studio. There are two main works in our SOIF studio. The first one is design part. We design the products and services to create the profit. And the second part is education. So we use the profit for education. And as for the products, we teach the students so that they can design the products, accessories and t-shirts, socks and bags. And we sell those products. And we also receive orders from companies and other institutes. And we earn the profit and use the profit for the second part, which is education. We teach Photoshop and Illustrator, and we also plan the project together with these students and sketch the product. And once we have the product, we take the photos together in the studio and edit the photos. So through these various processes, they can have the hands-on experience and learn about design. As a result, after leaving from the orphanage, they can dream about their houses. So those houses can be the inspiration of the design. And we were motivated from the Korean traditional designs as well to create these socks. And we teach these design not because we want them to be designer. Rather, we want to give more experiences so that they can understand what they can do and what they cannot do, and they can also consider various job opportunities. So this is the exploration. This is very common experience for the ordinary people with their families, but these students do not have those opportunities. And we hope that they can feel rewarding through this experience. For example, this designer is the senior year in high school and want to go to the design department of university. So we met them in high school, and through the sketches, the student created this sunflower design, and eventually it turned into the real product, and it became the product that is sold to the consumers. So this will be a very rewarding experience. And I'm not sure whether you know about this, but in Korea, when you go to the design department of university, you need to study in a private school, and the fee is really expensive. So it will be too expensive for the orphanage. so they cannot provide the support. So part of the profits will be spent for these students so that they can learn the design, and we want to keep the dream on. And the outcome of this design will be spent for their own dream. So for these students, we provide opportunity to explore, and this is an opportunity for them to plan a project and learn the hands-on experience. And in the process, we would like to give the rewarding feeling. So design will be the best tool for this. And there are young people who are already out of the system. And for them, we provide various mentoring programs, including the economic mentoring program, so that they can live on their own. And through the sharing experience, we can prevent the loneliness of these young people. We are doing this because we cannot change the entire life of these young people. However, we can change the perception and attitude of these young people, then they can change their own lives. The SOIF Studio is a place where young people can create their own life, and we provide experience and opportunity so that they can be the full member of the society. Thank you very much.
고 대표님 감사합니다.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ko.
처음에 소이프라는 단어가 어디서 나온 단어였나?
I was wondering what is the meaning of SOIF, and I realized that it stands for standing on your feet. And you're supporting the young people who are aging out from the system, and design is utilized for achieving their dreams. So we would like to move on to the last part of this session, the panel discussion. We are behind the schedule, so I would like to give you two common questions for all the presenters. Actually, we prepared separate questions for Mr. Nam, but I don't think we need to have separate question for the designer and Mr. Nam. We looked at various projects. While carrying out various projects, what was the most challenging parts for you? And what kind of support is needed to continue these activities? These are the two common questions, and we would like to get the answer from Mr. Nam first, then Joanne Carson, Ms. Choi, and Mr. Ko. So this will be a very short Q&A session. So let me first turn to Mr. Nam. What was the most challenging part, and what kind of support is needed from the society and from companies?
So the most challenging part of my project was, I must say that the topic that I want to share with people do not really spark people's interest. Maybe you can relate with what I'm saying. Usually when a topic is very popular and people are very much interested, they're motivated to make changes, but the topics of my own stories are not topics that usually spark people's interest. So how can I induce people to read my article? I think that's the biggest challenge, because these topics only are interested by the minority group in society. I think this is a challenge that I face every time I write a story and every time I engage in an experience. I mean, the experience itself is challenging and I do get psychologically exhausted, but more than that, I really want this experience to spark people's interest and let people become more empathetic to the lives of other people, but that's not easy. As we move towards a digital environment, I think this is becoming even more challenging. So how can I share the story with a wider range of audience? I think that's the big challenge. And with regards to the kind of support that I need to continue these projects, that's something that I've been thinking about. Do you need money? Oh, well, I think I need my bosses to be more, I guess, understanding why I need to do this. And of course, there are many news articles out there these days who aim for the most number of clicks, and they're very, I guess you could say that there are many investigative reports that actually visit the sites and very quality news articles out there, but in the process of distributing those articles, sometimes things will get distorted. So I wish that we would be able to encourage people to read good articles and to seek for articles that cover the story of those who are living together with us and yet their voices are unheard. Thank you very much.
Mr. Carlson, please.
All right, let's see. Should I speak now? Is this?
Yes, please
okay,
go ahead.
very good. Okay, thank you. So sorry for that. So I think very quickly, the most challenging issue that we have faced in development of the relief housing units that we have done today, it has not actually been the design process itself. There are a good resource full of very talented designers out there. It has been to connect the innovation and the design world with the humanitarian systems, because they with the humanitarian organization, the United Nations, that are actually out there doing an impact. If you Google around for emergency shelter or temporary shelter, you will find hundreds and thousands of different designs that are super creative, but very few, if I would say super few, I think we are one of the few examples, have made it into scale. So there is a bridge that needs to be done here in order for the design community and the innovation community to better link into the humanitarian organizations, right? And that has been a challenge. I think that's where we have succeeded. I think that we have built this bridge to have a good partnership with the United Nations to take in their needs and find ways where we can develop a prototype and iterate solutions together. That has been very, very difficult, much more difficult than the product design itself. And I spent much more time on building partnerships than on actual product design, right? So I think that has been the key challenge. And I think that going forward into the future, I think that will remain the challenge. We have not resolved this. I think we found we've had a shelter now, a place where we are having a platform where we can operate. We're having projects, really all across the globe. So we're fortunate for that. I'm a firm believer in collaboration and not reinventing the wheel, right? And that's why I keep our team, we are doing 15,000 shelters a year. We have 12 people on our team. And how we achieve that is that we work in collaboration, both in design, in production, sourcing, supply chain, etc., and with humanitarian partnerships. I think that's how we're going to continue. I think that's how we can contribute to this, because I think that there's so much design and designs that we have seen around here, different ways to use empathic design methods and co-design. I think that it's finding an enabler to this and to connect the two that really is the challenge here in the humanitarian world.
Thank you, Yohan. 최 팀장님 어떻게 생각하십니까?
Ms. Choi? Yes, the challenge, there is one clear challenge. Most of the decision makers are people without disabilities. And therefore, empathizing with the need for these products was very difficult. The process of persuading them was difficult. This device is very expensive, but can it really change the lives of people? That was the question that the decision makers would think about. Maybe they say that giving them money that is worth their month's living might be more helpful than providing these expensive devices. So persuading them that that's not the case was very difficult. So it's been 7 years since we were incorporated, and For the past 7 years, we actually did some work on enlightening people why these devices are needed and how the technology can benefit mankind, and they can indeed help people in actuality, not just in terms of sales and marketing. I'm not talking about just sales and marketing. We really had to persuade the decision makers, and we reflected the feedback of many people with disabilities. That took up most part of our activity. So we believe that the party who are involved or the stakeholders' involvement is very important for them to be included in the design stage and for their feedback to be incorporated, because only then when the products will have good feedback. And so at our company, we have people with visual and hearing impairment who are directly involved in design. So you do pay them? Oh, you do give them feedback? Oh, yes, they give us very feedback. And of course, we do sometimes give them money.
Obviously, the economic part was very challenging. But the most challenging part for us is breaking down their stereotype and change their attitude. For example, we taught them for a long time, and we hired one person as a junior designer. And when the person was in the orphanage, the person lived with 12 people, and the other 12 people live without work, and they can enjoy the free life. However, the only person we hired need to go to work because of me. So he complained that this is not normal. So we had to change their attitude. They are living in a life with their special habits. So we need to change those habits. What kind of support do you need? Frankly speaking, we need support from many aspects. But overall, we need the care for them and participation in this project. We are in a design studio, so we are approaching to this problem in a design perspective. But if other people can provide more support from other perspectives, then there might be more people who can be benefited from this project. Do you need my support? If it is, then I will provide it. It is very meaningful, and you are doing very important project for the people who are coming out of this system. If we have more time, we can talk more, but we have a schedule after this. So with this, we would like to conclude the session 1, caring design, starting to exert good influence. We looked at good cases, and we now understand how it is important to change the perception. Then, with this, we would like to conclude the session 1. Distinguished guests, thank you very much for your participation.
So it's very interesting to learn that the design starts with the way we look at each other, and it could have a good impact on our society. And we could learn some of the difficulties that actually they have on field, especially for those who are in needs, or for those physically challenged or virtually impaired, or those who have a hearing impairity. So there are a lot of different ways to support them, and especially by the design. So I hope this opportunity has served as a great time for you to learn those to help them who are in needs. Thank you once again to Professor Na and the 4 speakers for their insights. And this concludes session number 1. And thank you for participating in session number 1. And the session number 2 will begin momentarily. 자, 두 번째 세션을 진행하기에 앞서서
Before we begin the session 2, for the audiences joining us online, we would like to inform you about the special event. Please look at the screen and you can participate in the event. We'll see you soon.
From now on, our second session, Actionable Design, Changes We Make, will begin, and it'll be chaired by CEO of Perception, Ms. Soyeon Choi. So please welcome Ms. Soyeon Choi to the floor, as well as our presenters, Senior Photographer at Reuters Tokyo Branch, Mr. Kyung-hoon Kim, and also Professor at Conservatory Rossini, Dr. David Monaki, Social Designer at Kukla, Mr. Sebastian Desolé, and the CEO of Jerry Back Junior Park. And now, let me give the floor to our moderator, Ms. Choi.
네, 안녕하세요. 퍼셉션 최소연입니다.
Hello everyone, my name
오늘
is Choi
세션의
So-hyun
주제를
from Perception
맡았는데요.
and I will serve
이번에는
as a
행동하는
moderator
디자인,
for this
우리가
session.
만드는 변화에
The title
대해
is Actionable Design, so we will talk about the changes we make. And we have four presenters and I look forward to the presentations. And after all the presentations, we will also have panel discussion. Without further ado, we would like to invite the presentation. And let me introduce the first presenter. The title is One Step Forward Touches People's Heart. The presenter is Kyung-hoon Kim, a chief photographer for Loader Tokyo Branch.
예, 여러분 안녕하세요.
Hello
오늘
everyone.
이렇게 서울 디자인 어워드라는 의미 있는 행사에서 여러분들
It
만나게
is
돼서
my
정말
great
영광입니다.
pleasure to meet
제가
all of you
일본에 살고 있기
in
때문에
this
오늘 직접
Seoul Design
여러분들과
Award Conference,
온라인으로
and I'm
여러분들과
staying in
이렇게
Japan,
되게
so
맛있는데요.
I'm
대신
meeting
저는
you
마스크를
online.
쓰지 않고 말을 할 수
So,
있으니까 그건 참 좋은 것 같습니다.
It is
그래서
very
오늘
unfortunate that
다양한
I
분야에서
cannot be there in person,
디자인이라는
but I don't
멋지고 우리
have
사회에
to
꼭
wear
필요한
the
일을 하고
mask.
계신
So that's the benefit for
이런
us.
의미 있는 시간을
And
갖게 되었는데요.
we would like to
사진
talk
디자인을
about
하고
the
있는 저와
actionable
여러분들 사이에는
design.
그다지 접점이 없을 수도 있습니다.
And
하지만
I'm a
저는,
photographer, so
오늘
you might
참가하시는
not relate
대부분이
to my story.
네,
However,
청중분들께서 디자인에
as I
관련된
understand,
분들인데요.
most of the
저와 여러분들
audiences
사이에 한
are
가지
working in the
공통점이
design field.
2차원,
And one of the
3차원의
common things we
이미지,
have
형태의
is
공간으로
we use the 2D or 3D
그 이미지와
and
기능이 우리
that
사회에
image
조금은
and functions
좋은 역할과 그런 방향을 흘러갈 수 있도록 고민하시는
should
것처럼
be
저 역시
contributing
제 사진이
to the
그러한 일을 할수
society.
있도록
And I
고민하는
have the
역할을 하고
same
있습니다.
concern. I hope my photos can
제가
contribute to
화면
the
쉐어링을
society.
시작하겠습니다.
Then let me share my screen.
예, 잘 보이시죠?
Can you see my screen?
먼저 저와 제가 하고 있는 일에 대해서 간단히
First, I would like to introduce myself and my work.
사진 기자가 되고
Since
그런 꿈을
I was in high school, I wanted to be a
여러분들 중에 학창
photographer.
시절부터 이 디자이너의 꿈을 꾸신 분들이 많으시리라고
There might
생각하는데요.
be some people
저는
who want
대학에서
to be a
보도 사진을
designer,
공부한 뒤에 사진
and
기자가
I studied photography and in the university, and more than 20 years I've been working in the Reuters. And when I look back, there are many photos, but there are some dangerous scenes, and I visit the place people do not want to visit. For example, there are the demonstration scenes where tear gas is spreading, and I also visited Fukushima, where the radiation is still active, and I also covered the natural disaster, and sometimes I send my photos right away from the scenes. And I had an interview before about my job. I didn't talk this, but the headline was, I'm a photographer, photography journalist who is risking myself. But there might be some people who think like that. The essence of my job is not going to the dangerous places and taking photos. The key for my job is making records with photos. So that's why I'm a photography journalist, and that's why I'm using camera instead of pens. So I'm not just trying to take good photos. I would like to talk with image or visual image. So I want to be a visual storyteller. That is the essence of my job. And my news photos can be very important records for the future generation. So the another essential point for my job is making the image records of our history. For me, this photography journalist or visual storyteller is because of the characteristics of the photos. Seeing is believing. We usually say that. For more than a century, we believe that that is the essence of the photo and the power of the photo. And photography made a transformation in the 21st century. In the digital age, we can distort the image, but still the image is very powerful. One copy of photo can attract the attention from people, and the photo can make people look at. So from strong image, people want to find the message, and that message can move the heart of people. So even in the age where digital photo is widely available, this is true. And the image is very powerful, not just for the photography journalists, but also for the designers. And that is the power we can exert. So the power of the image and impact of that power can be explained with the one example I covered. The caravan story in the South America. You may remember in 2018 when President Donald was in the office, thousands of people went to the US for the better life, and they were from Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador, and they wanted to get out of the crime and violence of the gangs. So they used the caravan. Of course, legally speaking, they're illegal immigrants and they understand their fate. However, at the time, they were very desperate. So they flocked to the US because they want to get the attention so that the US can be more humane and embrace them. And the world called them as caravan in the South American region. At the time, this South American caravan was at the heart of the international news because of the strong line of the Donald Trump. I believe you remember the tweet of Donald Trump. At the time, when the caravan approached the border, he described them as a gang and rough people. And Donald Trump promised that the war will be higher and he will use the military force. So when there is an international news, we gather the people, especially the journalists with the different backgrounds, to cover the story because we want to cover the story in a fair manner. So I was hired for the special coverage team, and from the Mexico City, I followed them. And from Mexico City to Tijuana, about 3,000 kilometers, I traveled together with them, and it took about 3 weeks. So I followed the caravan people, and after a long journey, finally, they reached to the border of California, and they stayed in the refugee camp. And one day, in front of the border, they wanted to show what they want. So they were doing demonstration, and a certain situation happened and they gathered in front of the boulder. So as you can see in the photo in the slide, this is the boulder, and the boulder guards shoot the tear gas to prevent them crossing the border. And there were young children, and the mother was really shocked. So the mom was running away from the tear gas, and I didn't expect that situation. But at the time, the tension was escalating, so I had some kind of sense, and I was holding the camera. And right in front of me, I was staying with a family, and I didn't know the family, but the tear gas fell in front of me, and the mother held the children in her arms, and I took the moment and take a snapshot. So that photo was carried in the news, and it was covered in the main page of the news website and the first page, and one White House court journalist used my photo and asked a question, what do you think about the situation in the caravan? So my photo became an icon, and this photo became very popular. So I wanted to hear more from the family, so I wanted to find the family. The woman was 40 years old, and she was participating in the caravan with 5 children. In the photo, there were only 2 children, but there were 3 more children, and the children in the photo were twins. So the photo created the ripple effect I didn't expect, and I wanted to know why people are interested in the photo, because the woman was wearing a t-shirt with the image of a frozen, and that image is symbolizing the American dream. And later I learned that it was not the t-shirt she wanted to wear, rather it was the t-shirt she received as an aid. And the t-shirt was very tight because she did not have any option to choose. And the children was wearing the diapers, and I asked her why they are wearing the diaper, and she answered that there was no trouser, that's why they are wearing the diaper. And I believe it created the ripple effect because the photo carries the power of the truth. Many people can see who are the South American caravan, and the South American caravan is not the object, and they are not dangerous gangs. They're just a family, just like us. So they have the human face. People discover that there is a truth, and that's why they are paying attention to this photo. And after the coverage of this photo, there were many good news. Thanks to this photo, after the coverage of the news, the family received support from many people in the US and Democrats. And several weeks later, they filed the asylum, and they can live in the US. And I also received the Pulitzer Award. And recently, I also got the news about this mother. They're living in Baltimore, and the mother is working as a cook in Mexican restaurant. And just like the photo on the right side, they are growing very well, and they are adjusting to the US. And thanks to the photo, they said that the mother wanted to invite me because the life has changed. So I believe the photo supported her. So sometimes one photo can change many things. When I was young in the school, when I studied photojournalism, I'm skeptical. Of course, as a photojournalist, my image can be struck in the minds of many people, and I'm very pleased that my photos can deliver the news. But in my opinion, the break news image is not made by the photographers, rather it can be created by society. If the society wants to make changes and wants to know the truth, then one photo can be selected by the society. Then it's like a tipping point. It can have the explosive power. So the image that can change the world and can create the impact to the society can be selected by the society, not by the photographer. In a sense, it's like a confess that I don't have the power to change the world with one photo. Maybe I'm just a photojournalist, but I still want my photos to be influential to the society. And I consider the ways, and there are many ways. And one line from a movie first my mind. Musical Rent was created by this Jonathan, and that was depicted in the movie Tick Tick Boom. The actor suffered from many failure and then created a workshop, but the response was not good. So one of the editor gave a feedback, write the next work and you need to continue to write the work. So you need to sharpen the pencil and you continuously write the artwork. So in order to create good influence to the society, just like sharpening the pencils, I need to continue my job. Last but not least, I would like to show you one story I covered in recent days. As you know, in Sri Lanka, there is a large demonstration due to the economic situation. At the time, I spent about 3 weeks to cover the story. And due to this economic situation, there were many people living in slum. And due to the internal war, people were in a difficult situation, but they didn't worry about their meal. However, nowadays they are worrying about their meal due to the political situation. So I wanted to tell the story about them. So I used the close-up shot and I also used the portrait shot. So I created a combination shot. In the photo, there is a mother, and this is the dried fish, which is the last protein they had. In the past, the mother can provide meat and fish, but it is not the case anymore. And due to the financial crisis, now people worry about the medication they are taking now, even though in the past the country enjoyed high quality of the medical services. So I created the image of 13 families. So just like this, my work cannot make the immediate change. However, I am continuously making records of images. So this is the end of my presentation, and thank you very much. So that was the presentation from Mr. Kim Kyung-hoon. He said that people and society can create the impact of the image, not by the photographer. So I believe the image creators need to be more responsible. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Let's now invite our second presenter who will talk about a very interesting topic. So listening to the sound of the digital as well as the ecological heritage. So now we'd like to invite Mr. David Munaki, Professor of State Conservatory, G. Rossini.
So thank you very much for good morning and good afternoon to everybody. I'm David Monacchi, and I am an ecoacoustics researcher and interdisciplinary artist and composer. So let me turn on my screen presentation. Can you see my screen? Can you see my screen? Okay. Something wrong here. Share.
Yes, we can see the screen. It's not in the full screen mode though. Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. So I will be talking about Sonospera, a sensorial amphitheater built in Pesaro, UNESCO Creative City of Music. So before starting our conversation, let me play a short presentation video for you.
Sonospera, a world-unique technological amphitheater for deep listening of ecosystems and music, internationally patented as a mobile space. The audience sits in circular terraces, transparent to sound, with 45 loudspeakers positioned on an acoustically perfect geodesic dome. Sonospera is able to reproduce the three-dimensional soundscape with ultra-high-definition spatial audio, equipped also with a 360 degrees projection surface with horizontal resolution of 24K. The latest cultural program explores the frescoes in the Stanza della Segnatura of the Vatican Museums, digitally decomposing and recomposing the four masterpieces of Raphael in their symbolic structure, passing through the preparatory cardboard and synopia stages. Fragments of Extinction in the Climate Clock, based on the long-term project for which Sonospera was born originally, is a sensory experience in pristine ecosystems of the Amazon, Africa and Borneo. Sonospera thus sends a message from Pesaro on the planetary biodiversity crisis and on the urgent ecological transition, now imperative to our civilization.
So, just a bit of project history. Since 2005, we have worked for 8 years for the design and engineering phases, going through several different projects. Then, after the Italian and international patents, and before the final Sonospera, 3 different constructions were done. I will show some images of these. So this is, in 2013, the first construction as a research and production laboratory at my university institution in Pesaro. In 2015, we built the first mobile prototype presented at the World Conference of Science Museums. In 2017, a stable theater with up to 200 seats was built at the Naturama Natural History Museum in Denmark. Sonospera, the first large-scale mobile theater, was finally built in Pesaro and today can travel in cultural venues, contemporary art and science museums. Sonospera was opened to the public by the President of the EU Parliament, David Sassoli, on January 2020, just before the pandemic, as a unique spherical space for sensorial and cognitive experiences. Somosfera is today a cultural platform for expressing multidisciplinary programs of science-based art, spanning from environmentally oriented journeys into biodiversity to voyages into Renaissance Italian art and music. From new ways of exploring oral and visual perceptions to applications in the areas of neurophysiology and accessibility. The three-dimensional sound experience delivered by 45 loudspeakers in spherical geometry and the circular screen are in fact radically different from the solipsistic one-person VR delivered by headsets. In Somosfera, individuals sit together in the same cave as in an ancient theater. The experience is thus a shared virtual reality where humans are again guests of complex ecosystems which breathe and thrive all around them. From an audience point of view, a very sophisticated art science experience is surprisingly involving intergenerational and intersectorial audiences, schools, universities, concerned people, general public, and special accessibility needs. So the sensorial journey is a unifying medium. So Somosfera has a multifunctional scope, and the thematic areas include ecosystems, early and classic music, computer music. The idea is that from primordial soundscape to the future of musical creation, all the spectrum can be covered through the experience into this special theater. 3D spherical sound puts these diverse thematic areas on the same perceptual level. Listener is at the center of phenomena. Given the theme of this conference today, I was asked to talk specifically of one of the programs that is now active in Somosfera. Somosfera was indeed originally invented and engineered for the scope of reproducing the three-dimensional sound of ecosystems to broad audiences within the framework of the long-term project Fragments of Extinction. These three photos illustrate different moments of this program. Since 2002, the project Fragments of Extinction is recording sonic fragments in the most ancient and biodiverse primary equatorial rainforests left on Earth. 24-hour-long sound portraits are stored for posterity and shared immediately through deep listening experiences. We are strongly convinced that the medium of sensorial art will help in filling the gap between the perception of the uncomfortable truth of biodiversity and climate crisis and the ecological transition, now urgently required to all our societies. The project workflow unfolds through different steps: fieldwork in the tropics, data analysis, dissemination of findings, and soundscape post-production in dedicated studio for preparing installations in museums and public spaces. These are the expeditions we carried out since 2002 in Amazon, Africa, and Borneo. The latest recording campaign was carried out in the area with the highest gamma and alpha diversity in the planet. Let me show you some pictures. This is a picture from Borneo, Deep Tropical Forest. This is a recording camp. The collaboration with natives, very important to penetrate the forest, always. Flooded forest in the Amazon, and recordings which are 24-hour long, of course. To conclude, just a personal reflection. When I started this project in 1998, it wasn't clear that the destruction of the natural world will have gone so fast. Nowadays, I ended up doing into the Sonospera an educational program on climate change for helping this desperate humanity's last second paradigm shift from the anthropocentric culture to an ecological conversion that we have to commit to. From the climatic projections and scenarios that today we all know about, the entire biosphere as we have known it seems just at the tipping point and will not succeed. The great majority of individuals on this planet will not be supported in their intimate leap of awareness. From what I've seen personally over these last 9 years of biodiversity listening sessions in ecoacoustic theaters and the Sonospera in Pesaro, sound is one of the most powerful media to reconnect humans to the environment. It is able to move deep emotional energies, the ones we need to feel the urgency, and to make our sustainable daily choices and sacrifices that will all be called for over the next decades. Thank you very much.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you very much
너무
for that
매력적인
presentation. It was a very attractive and appealing project, and also we're very thankful that such project was held. Thank you very much, Professor, once again. So very important but uncomfortable issues and issues that are difficult to be experienced. How can we perceive them cognitively is very important for us to put this issue and its solution into practice. So thank you very much for sharing that meaningful project.
Let me invite the third presenter. The title is Enzo Mari's Gift for Self-Reliance. The presenter is Sébastien Deschoulet from Kukula.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good morning from Berlin. I'm Sebastian Deschler, I'm a social designer, and I'm honored to be here and talk about my work. When I was asked to speak, I thought about it could be good to reflect the project, which is a few years ago, but was kind of mind, life, and design changing for me. So I want to share with you this project. Let me open my presentation. So, do you see it? And now we need a full screen presentation.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, good. So the project I want to talk about is all about this chair from Enzo Mari. He designed it in the 70s. And about this blue wood you see, which is from a boat refugees are heading from Africa to Europe with. And so into this journey we want to dive right into. The journey starts in 2007 when today's friend of mine had to leave his little village with his brother. They went through the Sahara Desert into Libya where they lost each other. And he made his way on a boat with other refugees towards Italy, where a 6 years journey as a homeless young man of about 12 years in this time started. When I and other designers, together with artists, met him in Berlin. He was living in a tent camp in the center of Berlin, demonstrating for human rights of his own, for being not called illegal. So we started to invite him and his friends to our workshop to build, just with a hammer, nails and wood, to start building furnitures, DIY furnitures. And after 3 weeks of building, made a lot of furnitures. We built it out of friendship. We had a good time. And I thought they will take the furnitures to their tents to improve their lives, but they just kind of let me know and kind of laughing because they didn't need furnitures. They need a right to have a chance in their lives and building up their own life. So what this chair is about, the concept of autoprogettazione Enzo Mari presented in 1974 is a collection of plans you can rebuild in an easy way, furnitures of all kinds. And this book helped us in the beginning to easily, over language borders, to build practical furnitures in a few weeks. So this was Enzo's first gift to us from wood to a practical chair. But they didn't need a chair, so we thought about we could just sell a few of these furnitures, and because it's not meant by Enzo to sell these, we asked him. We went to Milan and talked to him and asked him, and he gave us the rights, the permit to use it commercially. So the idea emerged that we could create a Kukula refugees company for crafts and design, which is in its core, it's a workshop where we work together. The company is selling the products to a compliance crowd. And from there is coming the money for education and everyday life. And with this construction, we also wanted to find a way to legalize these young men by employing them. So this is, I think, the third gift of Enzo Mari was not to give us the rights to sell it. It was the idea that, and he says it like this, design is dead, and we have to create models for a new society. So this was our try in this way. How did the design take this design is dead? The chair you see here on the right side in the Vitra Design Museum did his way, became famous, a lot of newspapers, television, and in the end the Design Museum. But where are the 5 young men? In this time, this chair was in the museum and the 5 young men still stuck in their situation of being illiterate. So, in the words of Ron Arad, I know he had a different meaning for this, but I think it fits. Be careful of being too fashioned. Our project nearly crashed by this gap between the fame on the one hand and the situation, the real situation of the person, what it's all about. So, when I asked myself what a small project like Kukula can be, and I met a few days ago, I met an intern from this time, and she told me that she learned everything from Kukula about design. Today she is a really inspiring designer herself. So I wondered because, yeah, I meet a lot of people who get really inspired. So Buckminster Fuller has this trim tab metaphor where he relates society to a huge ship in the ocean, and it's driving. And how do you steer a huge ship like this? You have the huge rudder in the back, the steering rudder, and on this rudder you have a tiny trim tab. So a small rudder, you move the small trim tab, this small force you create moves the huge rudder, and this huge rudder moves the whole ship in the ocean. So I really like this metaphor for small things having a big impact. And when I think today on our journey, we lost a few of our friends. They were going back to Africa or they just disappeared. A few made their ways into our society, now living here, are so-called integrated. So I'm asking myself, where did I help to integrate? And like David, you mentioned before, we as a society, and I say we for the Western society, are everyday designers. And I think everybody in this society has to know we are designing this world. by causing mass extinction, climate change, a lot of destruction in this world. And by this causing millions of people in the next years, many more, to leave their homes as refugees. So first of all, to help these refugees is to change our and my life. So the goal of the journey I want to finish with is that the world that we create and the world that created us have to come together. Thank you for this.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Your slide stayed in the first page, but anyways, I believe you prepared very good images. So we'll share that image later on. And that was the presentation from Sebastian Deschoulet from Kukula. And nowadays in Korea, we can see many social designers, and they're not focusing on the short-term needs or commercial value. Rather, they would like to enhance the sustainability and room for improvement. So they're not just the product designer. We can enhance this into the movement. So once again, thank you very much for the presentation.
Now we're down to our last speaker. Most of them have participated through Zoom, but this particular speaker is here joining us physically in the venue. The title of his presentation is Buying Bags Will Make Ugandan Children Safe. It will be given by Mr. Park Jung-yeol, the representative of Jerry Bag. Hello. So thank you for inviting me to Session 2 Actionable Design of Seoul Design Award. I was very touched and impressed by the other presentations. Now I'm here as a product designer today, and I'd like to elaborate what we do as a business. But rather than from a businessman perspective, I like to talk about activities from a design perspective, how we came to do about this project and what we're doing. So, we have carried out a campaign called Design for a Better Life in Korea and Uganda. Once again, my name is Park Jung-yeol, or Jai Park, and I'm a representative of Jerry Bag. Now, before we went into Uganda, I actually researched on sustainable design when it comes to furniture back in Finland. And sustainable design, and as I was researching into this field, I actually came across many cases which were presented in the presentations here today, so I feel rather pressurized to give my presentation. But anyway, this table is something that I came across while I was studying in Finland. The whole entire design life cycle, from production to its discardment. And with honor, this design was introduced as a design for the future in Finland back in 2013. But these sustainable designs, how can we make sure that research is done in that area in third world as well? So that was a big task that was given to me. So for the first time in the world, I actually visited a country called Uganda in East Africa. And my life as a designer completely changed after that visit. Now, the picture that you're seeing is a picture of the city of Kigali, which is the capital city of Rwanda. And this next picture is a picture of a city in Uganda. And the third picture is a place called Bulwe, which actually shares border. It's in Uganda. It actually shares borders with Sudan. And you can see that in all three of these pictures, children are carrying water for their livelihood. So in East African regions, many children in many different villages have to carry water, and they face difficulties in that process. So there are statistics. Let me share them with you. So they actually have to travel on average of 6 kilometers a day for 1.8 hours. And because they have to carry these waters without any other tools rather than cans, they suffer from spinal pain and back pain. And because the facilities, or should I say systems on the road are very poor, they are susceptible to road accidents. Now, before I began this project, I had a big dream. How can I, as a designer, help these children overcome this challenge? But unfortunately, the designers whom I met actually were involved with this thing called Q-drum. So it's a rolling water can, but it's not very effective when it comes to high-rise mountainous areas or roads that are not paved. And as you can see, this life straw is very famous. You know this, right? And this amazing design, in actuality, actually has a very low power to absorb water that children in Kenya end up discarding them. So how can we, by discussing with local people, find a design that can last and be used for a long period of time? And that actually began when we opened a studio in Uganda. Now this is called jerry can. And this is a very interesting design, historically speaking. So there are risks of war rising all across the world. And this jerry can was actually designed for the purpose of war back in the days of World War II. But interestingly speaking, in the African region, this has become a daily essential for people to carry water for their living. And they're carrying the water without any other tools than this can. But how can we make this process more convenient for them and also prevent traffic accidents from happening? And that was the inception idea for jerry can, and therefore we created what is called jerry bag. And while carrying out this research, we really wanted to think about various methods to, once again, prevent car accidents. And the design studio is being operated in Uganda, which means that we need to make sure that people know how to deal with sewing machines so as to make the bag for themselves. And the biggest key point of our design is that it would allow people to carry these cans more easily. And because there are risks of car accidents, we wanted to make sure that we provide visual design as well as materials that are appropriate for preventing car accidents from happening. So to date, since 2014, we have seen an increase in the number of donation of these bags. And we have delivered, up until 2021, around 15,000 bags to kids in African regions. And this is not actually a big number. We actually wish to deliver more number of bags going forward. And with 2 sewing machines in Pampala, we worked with 2 sewing masters at a local market. And back when we first started this project, we did not realize that it would last for this long of a time. But now we have 6 sewing masters with us who are working on this project. The reason why we were able to sustain this project is because the design research that we did in Uganda to prevent car accidents was incorporated to the needs of our global customers. So we sell the products to our customers, but those products are actually an outcome of the research that we did in Uganda. We actually implement buy one, get one free campaign where the consumers' purchase can actually make an impact on the lives of children in Africa. And we also donate bags differently. We do not deliver the bags directly ourselves, but we actually deliver the bags through local schools and also nonprofit organizations who are operating in the country so as to enhance and further help their activities. So mutual partnership with local schools and local NGOs is very important for our business. And through these nonprofit organizations, we're able to receive feedbacks as to how the children are using our projects and what we can do to further upgrade them, and how much should the bag be for the parents to be willing to buy the bags. These are really important information for a business going forward. So once again, partnership with local schools and nonprofit organizations is very important. The way we design, the process itself is not very difficult. So our product aims at carrying water can, but while we distribute this to nonprofit organizations, we receive feedback that children are using this as school bags. So we wondered whether we should limit the use of the bag because it doesn't seem to fit the purpose. But I believe that expanding the usability of the bag is important so that people can use this as a bag for the water cans and also bag for their school books. Then with that, we thought about the difficulties that children may potentially come across when going to school. And in actuality, children face risks of car accidents when going to schools because they do not have appropriate safety system on the roads. So therefore, we wanted to take that local environment into consideration while making sure that the design is easy enough for the local people to produce. And we also wanted to raise people's understanding of the design, and we created samples, and through further meetings, we upgraded the products. So what we do in the Ugandan studio is to help the people to locally produce and disseminate the products as well as receive feedback and to disseminate them even further, also as to make sure that this product is for the benefit of everyone in the world, and that's the sustainability of our project. So back in 2014, when I first started the project, we had many difficulties, but the biggest challenge was that can making a bag fundamentally resolve the problem of children carrying these water cans every day? So this was a new area for me as well, and I always had to ask myself the question, am I really doing the right thing? Can I really make changes in society? So I was filled with that concern. However, when I first made the donation of the bag was used to carry water from a local well. And the children were rather shy to talk to strangers because they never really come across strangers in their daily basis. But one child came up to me, grabbed my hand, and said the bag is wonderful. And that the child is very grateful that we made such a bag. So up until then, I wondered whether I'm doing the right thing or not, but that comment boosted my confidence and it motivated me to further extend my work. And when I opened the bag, there were these beautiful flowers inside the bag because the child who was able to who had both of her hands free because of the bag was able to pick the flowers along the way. So when these small changes keep happening, only then will we be able to talk about the big changes. So I will continue to make these bags with the local people going forward. So we will not be able to enter a better world immediately overnight, but we will continue to strive for that end going forward. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. Thank you very much. So the water that is needed for the very survival and the bag that was used to carry the water can actually carried flowers too, which made me emotional and which moved me. And you said that small changes can make a great result. Thank you for showing us a model example. And when talking about sustainability, we usually limit ourselves to thinking about eco-friendliness, but sustainability can actually address a wide range of problems. Thank you for reminding us of that. And so there were some problems in airing the presentation material of Mr. Sebastian Dacle, but let us connect him back online for a panel discussion. Can you all come back? Thank you.
So I should show them again, or try to?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Do you see? the presentation now? Does it move?
네, 잘 보입니다.
Yes, we can see it. Please go to the next page.
So this is the picture about the journey. Can you see this with the broken boat?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So I will just, I mean, it's interesting. I made the whole speech just with the chair, but perhaps it's good also for the imagination. I don't know. So I just will jump through its 8 slides and I will say what I meant. So this is a picture about the boats on Lampedusa in Italy where they crash and they put them all together. And we took the wood from there for the chairs to build them. This is a picture from our first workshop where we were without language, common language, building the chairs. This is yes?
Please go to the next page when you explain.
Okay. I do, but you can't see it. I don't think it's working. I don't know what's... It's not working, technically. I switched on my computer it switches. I see different pages.
Yes, now we can see it. We can see the workshop photo.
Okay, can you go to the next slide? Yeah, this is the picture, the book of Enzo Mari, the Autoprogettazione, and on the right side you see the small plans. This is the whole plan about the book. So please go to the next slide. This is the concept of the company, Kukula Refugees Company for Crafts and Design, where I described how it works with the company's crowd. The next page, please. This is the picture of the Vitra Design Museum, where the gap between the famous chair and the 5 young refugees who's still stuck in the situations. The next picture, please. Is about, okay, this is the final picture about the world that we create and the world they created us has to come together. And the picture before was about the Buckminster Fuller's trim tab. So just you see now, perhaps you had much more beautiful imaginations in your head when I was talking about. So thanks for giving me the chance to show it again.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you very much.
네, 저희에게 늘 예상치 못하는 문제들이
We are always faced with unexpected problem, and I hope you can kindly understand the situation. Then we would like to invite the panelists once again to have a short Q&A session. We have Mr. Jung-Yeol Park and 3 presenters are joined us with online. Thank you very much first. We don't have much time for Q&A, so I would like to ask important questions first. When you begin your activities or projects, I believe you were faced with difficulties. So how did you overcome, and what was the motivation to overcome? So I would like to ask a question to Mr. Kim first. I'm working in a different domain, so the most difficult part for me is I'm handling the mass media, and my photo will be spread all around the world, and there are subjects of the photo. In the natural disaster, the situation might be different, but sometimes I need to cover the private part of the people. So I need to get the permission, and I also need to build the relations as a human to close the relations. So that is the difficult part, and I don't have the answer. I need to show the genuine intention, and I will also explain how this will be covered in the news media. I need to provide enough information, and if I'm genuine, then I can find the solution. So the authenticity and genuine mind will be the solution. Then let me move on to the next presenter, David Monaki.
So once again, the same question. What were the most difficult challenge that you faced when you did your project, and what motivated you to overcome that challenge?
So definitely, every trip in the primary forest in the tropics is a challenge, and every forest has its own specific challenges. I would say that one of the most important things was to establish over the years the protocol, how to record these sounds. Of course, we are trying to constitute intangible heritage of the natural world, so recordings have to be done in a certain way in order to store the spatial information as well. So bringing spatial microphones into a forest, it can be very challenging because of humidity, because of the many hazards that you face when you are in a forest, of course. And nowadays we record with 38 simultaneous track at the same time, and this enables us to really to get something which is consistent, a consistent sound portrait of a primary forest. But I must also say that another difficulty and challenge, of course, is to pave the road and to build the consensus, the cultural consensus, to build such kind of sound theaters. So theaters dedicated to the sound experience. That had to be a long process in really building this new idea of having the broad public being exposed directly to a sensorial, powerful experience of nature.
So social consensus you talked about, and the difficulties, the unknown and unexpected challenges that you face in rainforests were some of the things that you talked about, and the nature and the precious things that we must preserve as our heritage was part of your project. Thank you.
Next, I would like to turn to Mr. Sebastian Deschulet from Kugula. What was the most challenging part, and how did you overcome that?
I think the project itself was the most challenging part in my life. We discovered problems on every level, from making a startup with 5 young men who are uneducated, funding the project, psychological problems coming the way, fighting against the law in Germany and Europe. I mean, on every level. And then I was kind of, it's some years ago, so I was kind of in the beginning of my career and my working career, so I was too young to stand all these problems. I didn't overcome them in this way. I mean, we made a long way and we did, I think, a good job, but I didn't overcome these things also because I didn't know how far I can go. And I think this is, for me, a very important aspect of working in social and ecological topics, because the problems are so huge and we are all just humans. So to finding the right balance between how much I can give into this work and how much I need to be in my charge, in my power the best. And I think this is what I learned in the last years, to balance this more so I can give more to the world. And I want to say that I think this is, for me, a very, very important point to do. I see so many people who are so engaged and they are completely burned out. Focus also on yourself if you want to help the world.
Thank you very much. Many presenters asked questions to themselves. That was the common thing we can find from the presenter. So I believe that is the power for continuing the work. And we would like to turn to Mr. Park.
So whether it be Uganda or Korea, providing practical product for our consumers is our ultimate goal. So we've been doing this business for 8 years, going back and forth between Uganda and Korea, and the biggest challenge was that we have such a big cultural gap. So the consumers in Korea do not have a cultural understanding and experience of the African countries. So they know that in their heads, they know that they have to help people in developing countries, but they could not really feel that deep empathy at heart in a genuine manner. And that took a very long time. People actually need to feel that genuine empathy for more consumers and more people to take part in this. So I think that was the biggest challenge. So at first, before we met the customers offline, we really wondered whether what we're doing is truly effective. But since 3 years ago, we opened an offline showroom here in Korea. And the consumers who come there to purchase our product say that the messages that we delivered were not delivered across them immediately, but all the messages that we've thrown out there and delivered out there accumulated to eventually attract the customers. So time is really important. It takes time when you carry out projects like this. It's very difficult to solve problems in the short term. You really need to consider them in the long term and to learn from that. Thank you very much. And issues like these, if they're not made sustainable and if they cannot gain the empathy of other people, they cannot last for a long time. So you said time and waiting is very important. Thank you for that. So thank you so much. I know that we're over time, but I would like just to ask one more question because we have such a precious group of guests. So sustainability and coexistence is no longer an element of consideration. It has become indispensable in our lives. And in that sense, what role can design play going forward? And what are your related plans? Can you briefly comment? Now, once again, Mr. Kim first.
예, 저는 제가 어떤 계획을 짜서 취재하는 경우도 있지만
Sometimes I have planned for news coverage, but I usually follow the big trends. So I will continuously follow the trend, and as I mentioned before, I will sharpen my knife and I will continue my job. That is my goal. Thank you very much.
Mr. David?
Yes, indeed, as you said, the scale of what we're living now with the various environmental crises that we have is so big and is so urgent to really engage into a deep transformation of our societies that I believe that we have to use every mean we have, and design can be a very good, very important chain ring in the chain of a paradigm shift, because we need a paradigm shift right now.
Thank you very much.
Next, Mr. Sebastian.
Yeah, I agree completely, and the change will come anyway. We will have it by disaster or by design. So I think design will be everything. And I can say it again, everybody of us is a designer every day and designs this world. And right now we are focusing more on community. So I think because we are the ones who are doing this distraction in the world, one strong point, I think, is to re-strengthen communities and their relation to the nature, and creating from the community of humans, the community of nature around. So building up these communities is my focus right now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Park. So we started in Africa and we're supporting children in Uganda. But the key message is about safety in daily lives. And this is not regional specific, it's a global issue. So there's a saying in Africa that if you want to travel far, you have to go together. So for us to carry out these projects for a long time, collaboration is the key. I really want these projects to last. I want more people to participate, which means that we need more partnership and collaboration. So to establish a global cooperation, we will engage in further related activities. Thank you very much. So going together was a very meaningful message concluded by Mr. Park. So we are at a time when we think about the sustainability of our lives, and we were able to take a look at the role of design to that end. We discovered its potentials, and we also looked at how we can cooperate. So I wish that through the Seoul Design Award, we will be able to meet many more projects that cover this area, and for us to be able to share those cases through the award. That concludes session 2. Thank you very much.
Thank you for our moderator and all those 4 speakers. Session 2 obviously had a great presentations and panel discussions. They're talking about how to genuinely interact with the subject, whether that is us as a human, whether that is Mother Nature. Some of the problems arose with psychological problems or social law created by humans, problems with the culture or geopolitical issues. But all the speakers here today had shown the wisdom and efforts and their wills to overcome those issues. And I think these changes in Win by Design tell us that some people, some of us, have made a small but courageous efforts. So thank you once again for Ms. Soyeon Choi and our speakers for your kind words and insights. And how is the story today that we have shared? I'm intrigued by the work of so many people who are stepping into the right direction of our future. And at the same time, I'm deeply humbled by the time and effort made by our speakers to get here. It also makes me think about what I can do, what I, as a person, can do with the design. Tomorrow, a world-renowned scholar, president at Disease Network, Enzio Manzini, will give us a keynote speech on sustainability achieved through design. And the second day will also include a third session with the theme Coexisting Design, Sustainable World, and the announcement ceremony at the Seoul Design Awards, so please stay tuned. Let's wrap up the first day of the Seoul Design Award Conference here. And as I've mentioned, once again, there will be plenty of good sessions, good discussions, good presentations will be displayed tomorrow. So please don't forget and stay tuned. It'll once again start at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. So don't forget to stay tuned for the session number 3 at Seoul Design Award Conference. Hopefully you can feel the afterglow of the DDP, that is Dongdaemun Design Plaza, through the video I'm about to show you. And I will see you tomorrow. Thank you.